Unlocked is brought to you by Invincible, a program designed to unlock the potential of people and teams inside your organization. Join companies like Pfizer, Delta, the CDC, Google, and Chick-fil-A, and others in over 116 countries that are currently using this program to increase productivity and develop healthy cultures. Access hundreds of hours of content that is accessible anytime, anywhere. And finally, use real-time data to understand the health of every team inside your organization, which teams are performing and which ones aren't. Then understand the why behind that performance. Get free access to Invincible for 30 days by visiting www.giant.tv/30days. Hello, welcome to another episode of Unlocked. Today, we're talking about unlocking the potential of people. And we're doing that in a way that's a little bit different. We're going to talk about unlocking the potential of our corporations and our economy, our global economy, through something called the B Corp. And we're going to talk about what that is. So Chris Marquis is actually probably one of the smartest person I've ever talked to about, well, actually probably one of the only people I've ever talked to about this topic. So therefore he's the smartest. So congratulations, Chris. No, seriously, this guy knows a lot about this. He is currently a professor at Cornell, teaching sustainable global enterprise at Cornell. Previous to that, he worked at Harvard, where he developed award-winning course on social entrepreneurship. And his next chapter is he's moving to Cambridge over in England to continue his work in sustainable capitalism and teaching some courses there and educating the young minds over in England. So Chris knows some stuff about this topic. The B Corp. What is the B Corp? You're going to find out in this interview, and you're going to find out about why it's so beneficial, why it's setting a trend for the future of our economy and corporations as a whole. So I'm really excited. This was something that I learned a ton about in this interview, and I hope you will too. So let's get on with it, Chris. Chris, welcome to the show, man. It's so good to have you.
Great, Scott. I really appreciate you having me on. Excited to talk.
You have a book that is out you've been promoting now for almost a year. You've been talking to global communities about this. You've been doing multiple podcasts, multiple shows. And it is because I believe that this isn't at the forefront of everybody's minds and our worldview, right? And I think that what you're saying is that we can create a better world and that these B Corps are setting a trend for what we should do for the future.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I appreciate that sort of, you putting it so nicely. I do think that through business, we can actually create a better world. And, I think that there's a lot of things that sort of underlie this work that I've done that really, point to it being a really sort of positive trend. I mean, actually, the way that I learned about the B Corp movement, I think is illustrative of that. So actually, it's from my students. About 10 years ago or so, I was teaching at Harvard Business School, a class on, broadly speaking, corporate social responsibility. And a student one day said to me, why are we studying these companies like IBM and Timberland, and we studied Goldman Sachs as well. These are companies that, sure, they're really trying to do good, we think, but the social impact part is not at the core of the company. And we should look at B Corps, because those are the type of companies where, really the social mission is baked in. I must admit that I had never heard of B Corps at that time. This is around 2009, 2010. But I went back to my office and I Googled it and learned a lot and got in touch with the folks at B Lab, which is the certifying organization that certifies B Corps. And B Corps, just a quick definition, is a company that is certified for its social and environmental impacts. And that started sort of a decade of really researching this movement and understanding it in, I think, hopefully a fundamental way. And I'm sure we'll talk more about this. I don't want to go on too long for this first answer, but I mean, I think that the accountability and governance processes that have been developed within this movement are useful for all companies. So it's really not just about B Corps per se, but about how can we make all businesses better.
Okay. There is, so you hit on what a B Corp actually is. Give us an example. Who's a B Corp out there that we would be familiar with?
Sure. So there's a lot of them. You know, you look in your refrigerator, if you have Danone yogurt, Horizon soy milk, Silk soy milk, Horizon organic milk. You know, look on the back, there'll be a B logo. Danone North America is the largest B Corp actually in the world. You know, companies like Patagonia that are really, really well known for their environmental impact. Ben and Jerry's really well known for their social impact. You know, there's been a variety of sort of really hot public companies recently that are B Corp. So if you look in the past year or two, some of the best performing IPOs, well-known, you know, mostly direct to consumer brands like Warby Parker, Allbirds, Lemonade Insurance, you know, these are all also B Corps. You know, one of the reasons I wrote the book, you know, I think these are so many companies that people know, but the lines connecting these sort of dots hasn't been made yet. And this is one of the things I hope, you know, the book can do, is show there's a lot of companies actually out there that are doing good in the world. And there's actually a commonality they have. They've actually, you know, focused on this system of accountability and governance to really help create a better business.
Okay, because I have been in the corporate communication space for a long time, and my prior career of doing a lot of annual reports. We did a lot of corporate sustainability reports, and there was always that message being put out there of, hey, we need to report out, you know, whether it was for Chiquita, Sesame Workshop, or any of those organizations, it was, hey, we need to make sure that we are talking about the good we are doing in the world and make sure that that message is put out there, whether it was for, you know, obligation purposes, or whether it was just because that's what everybody else is doing, we need to do it too, or whatever it was. What do you think is the difference between some of the companies that put that message out? I'm not going to say if they're authentic or not, right? That's not for me to judge. But, you know, some of these B Corps, because they could be inauthentic in what they're doing, right? Who's to say Warby Parker is being authentic in what they're doing? Like, we want to believe they are, but what does it matter? Like, what's the difference between those companies that were doing the corporate sustainability reports that aren't filed B Corps and the companies that are? And what is the, I don't know, the dynamics between those two? Do you see a difference or?
Sure. I think that in this comparison you just made, I think there's a really important difference. And that is that, you know, many companies are doing great work. So I don't want to say that everyone's greenwashing or just, you know, putting out a, you know, glossy report with a lot of nice pictures and not actually doing good things. I think there's a lot of great work being done. I mean, many of these companies I mentioned that I used to study, you know, IBM, Timberland, even Goldman Sachs, are, I think, doing really high impact work. But where the B Corps are different than that is, I think, in it, you know, 2 to 3 dimensions. So one, companies that are B Corps, they've actually gone through a certification process. So they have been assessed on their social and environmental and employee impact and, you know, other stakeholder impacts by an independent nonprofit, you know, sort of third party, against a framework that has been defined and evolved over, you know, 10 to 15 years now by sort of world leading sustainable business experts. So there's actually, in some ways, a scorecard that these companies have been rated against, and they have to score above a certain threshold in order to be certified. And, you know, there's a lot of verification, random audits that are involved. So very different than a sustainability CSR report. This is actually an assessment of these companies by an independent third party. The other sort of key element, I think, is that these companies that are B Corps have actually changed their articles of incorporation, the legal form of the company, so that they actually have written into the bylaws that they're putting as much emphasis on their stakeholders like employees or community as they are in shareholders. I think that this has been, over the past 50 years, a trend has occurred where companies have increasingly focused on their shareholders and actually rebalancing things through these accountability processes, through these governance processes, so that all stakeholders are equally considered, I think is what makes the difference between B Corps and just general CSR reports a pretty important difference.
Okay, I get it now. It's kind of like the companies that come out there and they're certified organic, or they are
Right.
Certified paleo companies, right? They go through that rigorous process and they have to meet a certain standard in order to keep that badge of whatever it is.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to think about it. I mean, so most certifications are around various type of products like organic or fair trade, or like LEED certified buildings. So the B Corp you can think of as a certification of entire company. So it's sort of and I think that's sometimes it's a little bit difficult for people to wrap their head around, because companies have a lot of they made of different brands or subsidiaries or whatever. So actually what that means sometimes I think can be difficult. But I think that there's really increasing awareness among the general public of this sort of B logo, and that it actually means the company has been assessed on its sustainability, equity, other metrics.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I like that whole, I guess, that idea, and that clarification is really powerful. What do you feel like that B Corp label does for the culture of that organization?
Yeah, good question. So it's I don't know if it's so much the label as but the process that they've gone through. So there's sort of 5 major. So the assessment has about 200 questions, and it varies by where the company is. So actually 70% of B Corps are outside the US. So you have to take in, things are very different in different countries around the world, emerging markets versus developed markets. The industry the company's in. So, if you're manufacturing, tile, as an example, really well-known B Corp Firefly Tile, manufactures these beautiful handcrafted tiles. Or if you're an investment firm, actually, a number of impact investment firms, these are totally different businesses. So, there's, different materiality and assessment for different types of industries and size. So if you have a 2 or 3 person startup versus Danone North America, which is a $6 billion company. So depending on geography, industry and size, the number of questions may sort of vary in the follow-up questions. But so companies, of these 200 or so, about a quarter are actually on, broadly speaking, employees. So various kind of benefits, various metrics around like diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I think that actually having gone through that, and so many of the companies that have gone through it have told me that, this is a learning tool. Wow, we didn't realize that our, paternity leave policy was lagging other peers in our industry. We actually believe in this, but we just didn't know. I mean, so much I think of actually practices that companies do, or just from, maybe some accident that happened when they started, and they actually want to do better, and actually sort of seeing that benchmarking actually helps them. So I think that actually going through this process is what really helps companies build an effective culture. And this is what, so many of the companies that I've interviewed, I've now interviewed, over 100 companies that have gone through this process. And I was just on the phone yesterday with a marketing company called Fours Marsh Group, which is in DC, and they were very excitedly telling me about how, employees want to come work for them because their reputation has become so good because of going through the B Corp process. Actually, young folks, maybe my sort of former students, that tuned me onto this, they want to work for B Corp. So, I think it's an effective way to really understand, for your industry sector location, a way to build a world-class culture.
Because I can see where the values, it's a real value-based type of, I guess I'm gonna call certification, right? Or
Right.
level of incorporation because of and when you set that standard and say, hey, this is what we believe, then me as an employee, I want to work for a company that believes what I believe, right?
Right.
Therefore, you're going to get more out of me. If I'm more passionate about the cause, I could be, putting bottle tops on cans all day long in a manufacturing line. But as long as I'm aligned in my belief system with what you're aligned to, sign me up.
Right.
If I feel like what I'm doing to contribute to the greater whole of something is making an impact, that's cool for me. And I can see where the recruitment efforts are probably much more effective for that.
Totally. And retention too. So, you know, again, a number of, things I've heard from many of the companies is that, their retention is generally at a much higher level than their industry peers or, other companies they know of. And they think that this is, a big reason why is that they've, really tried to build this sort of culture around the purpose of the company that actually treats employees equitably.
Because you see a difference, right? There's this idea of we're going to set a value standard for who we are and what we believe and what our mission and our vision is. And it's going to be, real because we've gone through this process. Maybe we've been, there's this idea of like you said, where, oh, I didn't aware that my paternity, we want this to be something, but we just, so it's a real cool way to, maybe put themselves in check and make some changes in there. So once they do that, they get people that believe what they believe, they work harder, they're more engaged, and they stay longer, which at
Right.
the end of the day is going to make you more profitable, right? It's going to build customer loyalty with that because now you're getting customers that believe what you believe and that want to buy what you have to offer because they believe that they're doing good in the world.
Totally. It's a real virtuous cycle. And I think, it's one sort of comment that really stands out for me around this, attraction and retention area is that, one of the companies in sort of a unique industry to be a B Corp, actually, I'd interviewed them and they, someone said, oh, my competitors and sort of partners asked, why are you this B Corp thing? And their answer was, because I never have to think about HR. So no one leaves. And if I need to, if I'm growing and we need to hire someone, I have a line of people outside the door. So, I mean, I think that's, puts it in a very succinct way.
That's awesome. I love that. That's really great, man. To think of an executive at some company saying, I never have to think about HR. I mean, isn't that a dream? Like,
right.
I never have to think about people problems. And that's, a lot of the things that you manage are people problems.
Right.
And if there's something I can do to alleviate that pain, that's awesome. So let's talk about the book a little bit.
Sure.
So the core message of the book. So you've educated us on the B Corp, the philosophy, the idea behind it.
Yep.
What's the core of the book? Why did you write that?
Sure. So, so a lot of times, and we've been doing this too, actually. I mean, I get, I talk a lot about actually the B Corps because they are this really inspiring group of companies. But actually, what I think is more inspiring, and it's a little bit more difficult to wrap one's head around, is that, what they have created is not just a system to certify B corporations, but it's actually a set of principles, processes, tools for all companies to become better. So, I mentioned this assessment that companies have to go through to become a B Corp, and they have to get over a certain threshold. The threshold's actually 80 out of 200, which, as a professor, that's about 40%. That doesn't sound that great, but actually that's a really tough number to get from what I understand people telling me. But, this is a set of tools that, any company can use. There's a lot of discussion in the news and the financial press nowadays around ESG reporting and metrics, environmental, social, and governance. And this is essentially an ESG measurement and management tool. And actually nowadays, hundreds of thousands of companies, so not just B Corps, actually use this tool to manage their manage what matters, so to speak, in the ESG space. A number of lenders, banks, VC companies use this as part of their due diligence. So, they want to invest in X, Y, and Z company, they have to fill out the B impact assessment, because that's a way for the investors to really understand how the company is actually run. So I think this is something all companies can use. The second element is governance. So traditionally in the US and many other jurisdictions, shareholders have a legal primacy. There's this fiduciary duty. And I think this is always so amazing to me, because there's also this idea of social license to operate, where companies get all kinds of benefits from society, but then the shareholders are the ones that are legally get all the benefits, basically. And so this new type of company, it's called a benefit corporation, and it allows, so basically puts the other stakeholders onto the same legal plane as the shareholders. So it sort of balances things out, so the companies can be authentically stakeholder driven. And this is a legal innovation that actually, when my students told me about B Corps, didn't exist yet. So this is something in the past 10 years has totally, people don't realize it's sort of spread throughout the globe. So now over 40 US states, including most importantly Delaware, have this type of law. Places like Italy have passed it, France, variety of places in South America, Colombia, Peru, Uruguay, Rwanda in Africa recently passed this law, British Columbia. So there's now tens of thousands of these benefit corporations now that exist. Again, they're not B Corps, but they've actually a type of company that is legally obligated to meet all stakeholder interests, not just the interest of shareholders. And so, you asked about the core argument of the book, and I gave you a very long-winded answer. So now let me boil it down. All companies can do better for their stakeholders, and these accountability and governance mechanisms are the ways to connect the dots between today and tomorrow.
So, key steps to doing that. How do we move in that direction? So premise, love it, right?
Yeah.
But I'm a 1,000-person organization or a 5,000-person, or like, how do I move the behemoth of what I've built for decades, and I've operated this way forever, and now changing all this would be, I'm interested, but it seems like a big undertaking.
It is tough, and I'm not going to downplay the difficulty of it. I do think, though, that there are a few sort of baby steps, so to speak, that companies can do. So first of all, I mentioned this assessment. There's actually a quick version of the assessment that takes about a half an hour that companies can just sort of get the quick barometer. And that's a very useful first step. Another thing that is, so many companies that I've talked to have said it's really useful is that the networks that exist around this, I mean, it's a community. That's why actually I frequently refer to it as a movement. I use the term movement in the title of the book, because the people that are involved in this are so passionate about helping others get involved, sharing their expertise. So within the location of whatever company it is, probably there's something called a B local group, where they can actually connect to local B Corps, or they can connect to B Corps within their industry. One of the sort of famous examples I've heard about so many times is the CEO, the former CEO, she stepped down now, Rose Macario of Patagonia. So she was someone who was really passionate about helping other companies become better, so to speak, and through the B Corp processes. So, a lot of people would just call her basically, and she would take the time to explain to them like how Patagonia had done this. I mean, Patagonia is a big company, and why it sort of made sense for whatever company it was. So I think that doing the quick assessment and connecting into the community are two ways to just sort of take a baby step to learn about it and see if it makes sense for your company.
So why is it, I'm curious about this. You mentioned 70% of the B Corps are outside the US.
Right.
Why is that?
I think because, that's a good question. I think that there's a couple reasons. One, I mean, the world is big, and I know, we have a very much a US focus frequently. And obviously there's, a huge amount of economic power in large organizations in the US, but I mean, there's a ton of companies in, Europe, South America, Asia. I also think that the two areas where it has really been growing probably the most rapidly are Europe and Latin America. And I think that some of the reasons why that is that perhaps capitalism is in those regions is maybe more naturally stakeholder focused. So, you have in Europe was sort of this Rhineland capitalism model where, there's, unions involved in the governance of the company. There's a lot more sort of thinking about broader community and environmental effects. Latin America also has a lot of family-owned businesses. And one of the things I've really found is that if your sort of name, so to speak, is on the door, people really actually care about the values and giving back in a way that other companies I've experienced do not. So I think that actually family ownership also is another thing that, and it's big in Latin America and pretty big in Europe too, that also contributes to helping this.
Okay. I can see a little bit of that. And you said this has been like the trend for the past, I guess, 10-ish years now, or have these been around for a long time?
So it's only, so the benefit corporation has been 10 years. This is the legal type of company that B Corps are now about 15 years old. So B Lab, the certifying body, was founded in 2006. So, that's, not been that long. And I think, one of the other things I want to mention is that this last year has been, really special as well because of the public market takes on this. So, I mentioned a lot of these high performing IPOs, but also a number of existing public companies have actually taken shareholder votes to transition into a benefit corporation. So, you mentioned that, this 1,000-person company that, they want to get started on it. And so some of them, have said, okay, we're going to study actually converting our legal form and educate our investors and our, shareholders about why this is important, why this aligns with us. One example of this is a company called Viva Systems. They're a cloud computing company that really powers a lot of organizations in the pharmaceutical healthcare space. And they felt that, because their clients are healthcare companies that have a mission of helping, alleviate, disease and problems in the world, that they have a deep social mission, and that they really should convert to this, new kind of company because it just fit with the values and the objectives better. And so they've, that was the first company that actually converted from a C Corp to a benefit corp as an existing public company. And like I mentioned, it passed with 99% vote.
Is there a, I don't know, there may be, there may not be, but I'm just throwing this at you. Is there a possible negative side to not doing this? Is it for everybody?
Yeah, good question. So, I do think that the world is increasingly moving in this direction. I mean, you look at all the scrutiny on oil companies around carbon emissions, this, engine number one example, where they challenged the shareholder vote at Exxon and got 3 people put on the board. The Glasgow COP meetings, I think really highlighted the dangerous state we're in as far as climate change and potential like irreversible damage to the planet and humanity. So I think that, climate is an increasing, is a sort of a ticking time bomb that people is coming into view. I think, things like inequality, systemic discrimination, things like that are also things that people are sort of really understanding business has a role to play, both in the past, maybe perpetuating these issues, but actually also has a really, positive thing that they can do to help, make those things better. So I think whether or not every company will convert to be a B Corp, I'm not saying that, but I do think that these issues of environment, employees are things that all companies are going to be needing to think more and more about in the future.
Because you're mentioning these things, and that's great. And I think that there's a lot of people out there that are going to say, sure, I believe in doing good by the planet, and
Right.
think that people deserve, equity in the workspace and whatever, right? And it's saying it. But when I look at the financial side of the things, right? Because a lot of people, the naysayers may say, oh, that's the touchy-feely stuff. And that's great that people are doing that, but that's not our business model. That's not where we are.
Right.
There's no point in me doing that. I don't even market to those type of people anyway, right? So it's like, why would an organization that really cares about just profit bottom line care about doing anything like this?
I think, you may sort of have pegged me as some, I don't know, I'm just want companies to do good in the world, so I won't use my own words at first. I'll use actually, one of the largest and most successful investors in the world, Larry Fink, founder, CEO, chairman of BlackRock. He writes these letters to his CEOs every year. In the last 3 to 4 years, every year, he has emphasized the core theme of these is that the company should have a purpose beyond meeting shareholder needs, because this actually, like we've discussed, gives value to employees and actually has a long-term benefit then because of these attraction, retention elements that we discussed. Around climate, he's saying, all companies should be, have some carbon neutral plan. They should track and report their ESG metrics, because this is, mitigating long-term risk. So I think from a financial standpoint, these are things that, may look like, okay, this is going to, going through this process or increasing some benefit for employees or figuring out ways to go net zero may appear to be costs. And in the short term, they are. But even the world's most successful investor is telling companies to do this because it's a long-term, it's a long-term process, and actually the way the world is moving is suggesting these things are only going to be more and more important. So,
and it kind of takes me back to a thought of Simon Sinek's newest book, The Infinite Game, where he's talking about that infinite mindset versus that finite mindset. And the finite mindset is the profit of the quarter, winning the quarter, winning that next milestone of hitting profit, hitting our sales, hitting our P&L, whatever it is. But that infinite mindset of having, that's rooted in the mission, vision, the values, and the purpose of what we're driving. Because in the end, we may not win the quarter, but we're actually going to win at the end of the right. And it's like,
exactly.
Nobody really wins the game of business anyway. And it's all about how can the thing that we're doing, the mindset that we have, carry us on to make sure that we're doing longer term good instead of just that short term mindset.
Yeah. You may not, you think you're right. You wouldn't win, but people can most definitely lose. And, if you look at the, companies that are going, maybe going out of business in the future, might be the ones that actually are unable to, meet their employees and climate commitments.
That's right on. Yeah. That's interesting perspective, thinking about, well, winning, is one thing, but yes, losing is a bit, and you saw that during, the George Floyd uprising and a lot of those things that were happening. And where were the value systems of those companies at that point, where they're all of a sudden companies stepping up going, no, we care. We swear we do. We care about all this stuff, and it's like, well, and then you had people really calling them out and just saying, yeah, I've worked there. No, right. Like they say it, they don't really, like live
Right.
it. So I think you saw a lot of that come out during that time too. It made people a little bit more aware. And I think people now during the resignation, right? The great resignation we're having
Right.
is
Yeah.
it's kind of this like, well, I don't need to work there, right? I can go somewhere else
Right.
and work somewhere else, and they're going to pay me more, and it's more aligned to what I want to do anyway. So the power of the people is really taken hold, I think, on the way we're thinking about work and where we want to work and the companies we want to be affiliated with.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So at the end of the day, I love the message. I love I've learned a lot. I honestly, before even meeting you, I had no idea about this B Corp thing. Okay. So I appreciate you educating me and everybody else out there about this. If people want to get in touch with you, they want to get a hold of the book, they want to get in touch with you, have you come speak, promote an event, do whatever, how do they get in touch with you?
Sure. So it's very simple. My email, CMARQUIS, sort of my first initial last name, at cornell.edu. I'm actually moving to Cambridge in January, but that email will be working for the next year plus. So they can email me there. That's the easiest way.
Okay. All right. Fantastic. Super cool having you. Congratulations. And good luck in the next chapter at Cambridge, Harvard, Cornell, Cambridge. I mean, seriously, man, well done. Proud to have you on the show, and thanks for all your insights.
Great. It's been super fun talking, Scott. Really enjoyed it.
If you haven't been able to tell from other episodes that we've been on, that I'm a big believer in aligning vision, mission, values, purpose to what you are doing as a whole inside of an organization, to also make sure that the people you are hiring believe what you believe, to have clarity around that, so that when you are hiring, you're hiring the right people. They stay longer and they work harder for you. And that is what we need right now. That's what we probably always need. We talked about the B Corp, right? And Chris was mentioning a lot, and we talked about this idea of people, planet, and at the end of the day, it's profits. And companies aren't building themselves to go out of business, right? We need to make a profit. The way these companies are doing that, though, through sustainable efforts, through the goodwill that they're trying to create in the global economy, is their idea of how to make that happen. And there's a lot of successful companies out there doing it. He mentioned those on the show. If you don't have that mindset, if there is something blocking you from making progress in that world, he labels a few simple steps that you can do in his book, Better Business. And so go ahead, get a hold of that book. Take that assessment and just see where you're ranking. He says there's a really quick assessment you can find to do that and kind of see where you rank and see if there's some things that you can adjust. And maybe it's not full on becoming the B Corp, but there's some things that you can implement in your organization right now to help you attract the right people and to represent the values you want to be noticed in the world. So thank you very much, Chris, for being on the show. Good luck with the rest of your book launch and the next book that's going to be coming out. We didn't mention that, but that's happening, everybody. Get ready. If you want to find out more about me, you can go to skotwaldron.com. I got a lot of information and things there about what I do. You can also just like, subscribe, comment onto my YouTube channel, find a lot of helpful tips and leadership, culture, exercises on there for you as well as all these shows. So I'm really grateful for you, and thanks for being here. See ya next time on another episode of Unlocked.